In this video, we'll be talking about the Solidify modifier, as well as some basic mesh operations that are going to help us create and close holes within a mesh. So let's start off with talking about the Solidify modifier and what it actually does. So I'm going to add a simple plane scene. As you can see, the plane is just one single face. If we go to edit mode, you can see that it's actually just that, a single polygon. It doesn't have any actual thickness to it. So if we go over here to the modifier stack, we add a Solidify modifier, you can see that now it has some thickness. You can control the thickness through the thickness slider, and you can control the direction in which it goes through the offset slider. -1 basically means it goes inward, and +1 means it goes outward. So that looks pretty basic and simple. You can guess pretty much how you can work with this. It's pretty much like any other modifier. If we go to edit mode, you can see that we can still edit this mesh, and the modifier will adjust accordingly. Right now, though, you may not see an actual use for this, because this is just a simple plane, and I would like to sort of give you an example of something that's really way more useful. So I'm going to add a monkey to the scene, and we're going to actually create a helmet for Suzanne over here. So let's go to edit mode and go to faces and select a bunch of these faces to where our selection resembles a helmet. Let's select a bunch of these. Selecting. Okay. And now that our selection is ready, and we think that this is what we want in terms of a helmet shape, we can press Shift-D from the keyboard. That's Shift plus D to duplicate. And then I'm going to press Escape so that it doesn't move. And then I'm going to either right-click and choose Separate Selection, or I'm going to press P off of the keyboard, which is what I'm going to do. P for Separate Selection. So let's go back to object mode, and you can see that the thing that we just selected out and separated is its own object, but just as with the plane previously, it is without any thickness. It's basically just polygons. So I'm going to unhide Suzanne so we can see our results as we work with this. I'm going to select it, the helmet, and I'm going to apply a Solidify modifier to the object. Well, right now, as you can see, the thickness is on the inside, which basically carves into Suzanne's head, which isn't what we want. So we're going to select it, select the helmet, and we're going to turn the offset to 1, which basically means that it goes outward, the thickness, and we're going to increase the thickness to a point where we have something that looks like a visible helmet. And here basically we have a volume which we can work with. Since this doesn't really look all that much like a helmet, I'd like to tweak it though. So I'm going to show you how the Solidify modifier can work with other things, such as the mirror modifier. So let's make this symmetrical, and if you want to learn more about the mirror modifier, there's a separate video dedicated to it. So let's go to faces, delete half of this, and add the mirror modifier. Okay, awesome. So what's going to happen, and enable clipping, just enable clipping. So what's going to happen once we add the Solidify modifier in a positive direction, we'd say 0.2. You can see that basically we have the helmet thickness going over here. So right now, if we go to edit mode while we've selected this helmet, and we go to, for example, vertices, you can see that we can edit them. Since right now the Solidify modifier is in an outward direction, we are unable to see the vertices directly on top if we don't use transparency, so I'm basically going to disable Solidify for now. And I'm going to start tweaking this. So we're going to move this outward a bit. Press Shift and V to slide it. So basically what Shift and V does is it slides a vertex along its own edge. We're going to do the exact same thing here. Shift and V to slide it across. Create sort of an opening for that ear. Shift V and slide across. Create another opening. We're not going to actually design a helmet here. I just want to sort of show you that you can work on your geometry and then still I'm going to add a control loop over here. An edge loop, sorry. And I want to show you that you can edit your mesh and you still get a nice result when enabling the modifier. It's non-destructive, so basically nothing sticks. If you want to make it permanent, you've seen this done already, I think. So we come over here, we go to object mode, we come over here and we apply the modifiers. And basically right now it's all baked in, we can work with it. So now that we've seen how Solidify actually works, let's talk a little bit about working on meshes with holes in them, or just meshes with a single plane, meshes that have no thickness. So I'm going to, let's see here, I'm going to add the plane, which again, it doesn't have any thickness. So let's screw this down a little bit. And let's go into edit mode and create something interesting. I want to go to edges and I'm going to create with 2 edge loops a vertex which is at the center of this here plane. So when I go to vertex and I select this particular vertex in the middle and I press Ctrl Shift and B from the keyboard, you can see that it bevels out the vertex. So that's Ctrl Shift and B. Or I can right click and I can select bevel vertices. If I start scrolling, it's going to add more and more geometry to this, which is kind of nice. But right now I want to keep it simple. So let's do something like this. I'm going to go to faces and I'm going to delete this. Delete faces. So right now we have this right here rhomboid, and we're going to add a Solidify modifier to the mesh and we're gonna push it out a bit. And you can basically see that it creates sides across our hole. Let's, however, look at an interesting case. I'm going to apply the Solidify modifier. Let's look at an interesting case where you have holes right here in these faces. Let's say you've modeled things out a bit. Let's say, let me undo this a couple of times. Let's say that, for example, I've extruded this. And let's say that we've never had these faces to begin with. Let's say that they're holes. I'm going to delete them. how do you close this? The gaps that we have over here. So there are a couple of ways in which we can do that. If we select these two edges and press right click, say bridge edge loops, you can see that it bridges the edges. A nice thing is that this command, as you've read, works with edge loops. So basically we can select the entire edge loops over here, press bridge edge loops, and voila, we've closed this hole. However, what if we have a different kind of hole that we need to close in a model? Let's, for example, say that, let me delete this. I'm going to add a cube, or further, I'm going to add cylinder. Let me just find it. Yeah. Let's go to solid view because I clicked away from it. And let's say that we, for example, if we go to edit mode, let's say if we, for example, have, let's bevel this. And delete the face. Let's say we want this thing to go inwards, like to be, this hole to be extruded inwards and have a cap at the end. So how do we do that? Well, we can select the entire edge loop and extrude the edges by pressing Ctrl E and push them inward. We can do that, also constrain how we push this inward by pressing Ctrl and E and holding the Shift button. Now let's put it into place. And what we can do here is simply bridge these two edge loops. And now we have a hole over here that we can work with, a closed hole. Okay, so another thing to think of. Let's say that, for example, we want to extract some geometry and add volume to it without using the Solidify modifier. Let's take the monkey out. Let's go to edit mode. And let's make a similar helmet to what we did previously, but I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller so we don't have to select everything. Just these parts over here will do. So again, Shift D to duplicate, Escape to stop moving things around, and P to separate. And let's go to object mode, let's go over here. And let's say that we want to add volume to this without using the Solidify modifier. Well, we can do that. So what's going to happen if we, for example, select all of these faces and extrude them? Control E. We are adding volume, but it's not anything like what we have with the Solidify modifier. What we can do, however, is use tracked along normals, which we've covered in previous lectures. And right now, if we click offset even over here, we get the exact same effect that we would get if we had the Solidify modifier turned on. So basically that's another way of doing things like this. And what we've covered up until now should suffice for you to be able to separate your own parts from your meshes and give them thickness once you've decided on what form you want them to have. So that's it for this video. See you in the next one.